Hey, Peaceniks. Thanks for tuning in to the Peace on Drugs podcast. If we have any new listeners, my name is Aaron Akulis, Akulis. Follow me on Twitter and Facebook. If anybody, to people that listen to me, I wanted to say, if you have anything that you think I should bring up or something you disagree on or a story you want to tell, anything that you want to talk to me about, shoot me a message on Facebook Messenger, and if you have something you'd like to say on the podcast, I can make room for anyone. So don't, feel free to shoot me a message, and you can sign up to our email list at thepeaceondrugs.com, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. A lot of the advertisements I do, the funny commercials I do, that are fake. I don't have real sponsorship right now. We do funny videos, put them on our YouTube channel, stuff like that. The YouTube channel is the Peace on Drugs podcast. And this week, I didn't do a funny commercial. And I'll tell you, out of all weeks to do a funny commercial, this would have been the week, because the guest that I had today, William Rhino Mueller, is he's riding a unicycle from Las Vegas to Key West. And he's a wild dude, and it would have been cool to do a funny commercial. But unfortunately, I just don't have the time to do all the things that I'd like to do right now because I'm still working full time. But I did do something for this podcast because it turned out. So I woke up that morning, the morning of that I had the interview with him, and I had a crazy dream. And I know people don't want to get bored with someone's dream. Everybody's had crazy dreams, but all these crazy things were happening. Like an elephant walking, like little elephants on the side of the road. I was on this road I grew up on, and there was this crazy things, like a guy with a karate uniform was fighting a bear, the wildest shit. And I never occurred to me this is a dream. It was just like, wow, what is this? What's going on? And until an old friend of mine, Drew, I'm not gonna do last names. I don't know, call people out. He's no longer with us, but his family is. But he died of a drug overdose a few years back, and when he asked me he turned and asked me for a cigarette. When I was like, Drew, I was like, oh, this is a dream. That's when I realized it was a dream. So I woke up, and it was actually strange because I woke up into another dream. We've had that happen, and I was in another friend who passed away. This girl I grew up with, Shannon. I was in an apartment with her, and I was like, hey, I just had this crazy dream. Do you have a notebook I could write down? So I grabbed the notebook in her apartment and didn't realize, the fact that she was there didn't make me think I was still dreaming for whatever reason. I went back into the, suspension of disbelief or whatever that happens in these dreams. And I started writing this poem in a dream. And then I woke up from that dream and realized, holy crap, I was still dreaming. So I went and grabbed a notebook in this life, the real world. I assume this is reality. Who knows? But so I wrote this poem. And it's the first time I've written a poem in years. I probably 2 or 3 years since I've written a poem. I write poetry sometimes, but not very often. And it was just weird because so then I did this podcast, and Rhino we smoked a joint at the end, and both of us got a little, I think, higher than we were expecting, because we were sitting there and all of a sudden it was just like he started doing impressions, and like the conversation, he's like, this is a good time to talk about kava and kratom, and we hit the joint and then just couldn't get back on track to talk about that. But it was funny. But he read a poem that he knew from memory that he wrote when he was in prison. And I just thought it was so crazy. The first time someone's read a poem on my podcast, same day I wrote a poem for the first time in a few years. And so we talked about that, and I told him, I was like, you know what, I'm going to read my poem at the beginning of this one so you'll hear it. And instead of doing that, what I ended up doing is I was like, I'd like to put music behind my poem. And then I was like, well, that's not fair to him, because my poem's going to be all music, and then he's just reading his on the podcast. So I actually copied and pasted his poem and made it the second verse in like a song. And I had my wife sing a chorus. So that's going to be this week's sort of fake commercial. It's not a commercial at all. It's just my poem and his poem with dividers of Megan singing this chorus. I think it turned out pretty cool. It's a little serious. It's not. Wish I had time to do a funny commercial, because I could have done both. I just ran out of time. So I hope you enjoy this poem, or I should say these two poems. And one last thing, great guest. He's doing this unicycle ride from Las Vegas to Key West, raising awareness for 3 different charities that will be, I should have written down, but you can look him up at Rhino Ventures, and his name is William Rhino Mueller, Mueller. He's on Venmo. He's trying to raise money for this trip, and he's an interesting dude, and he's a wild dude. So anyway, cool podcast, fun conversation. I hope you enjoy our poetry, and here it is. It wasn't the elephant walking its young on the side of the road, or the grizzly some old white man was fighting with karate. The bear was gnarly and towering. The man had the headband and gi, and he was holding his own with kicks and chops like Bruce Lee. It wasn't the green Harley Davidson motorcycle I was riding, even though I'd never ridden one in my life. Or when all of a sudden I was walking on a dark road with strangers. It was when Drew turned and asked me for a cigarette. That's when I turned and looked up that dark and rodent-infested road. That's when I knew it was all a strange dream, and that I was in bed, 1,000 miles from that road I'd been down so many times as a child, because there's so many others I'd known on that road. Drew died of a drug overdose years ago. So I gave him the smoke, and we both lit up. I took a deep drag. I hadn't had a cigarette in ages. "How you been, old friend?" I asked.
For too long we've been losing our loved ones. For too long we've been missing you.
I'm trapped in a cell where I inevitably face 10 years in prison for a crazy car chase. I could have never imagined such an incredible waste, nor pictured myself taking a taste. Well, the people trapped here are full of emotion, but it's mainly the type that brings only revulsion. There's fear and there's anger, jealousy and hate, talk of lost love, broken families, all blamed on fate. It's sad that so many consider their plight. It's just one more reason to stray from the light. They rape and they steal, they kill and they fight. They don't seem to realize what they do isn't right. So for now, I sit here, I listen and wait until my name's called and I'm led at the gate. Hopefully for me, it's still not too late to strive and work hard and become something great.
For too long we've been losing our loved ones. For too long we've been missing you. For too long we've been losing our loved ones. For too long we've been missing you.
All right, hope you enjoyed that. And remember, follow me on Twitter, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and anything you want to add to what I'm saying or some story you want to tell, message me on Facebook, Aaron Akulis, Akulis. Hope you enjoy this interview with my man, Rhino.
America's public enemy number one in the United States is drug
Drugs
abuse.
are menacing our society.
Any thoughts on the drug problem?
I had a great time doing drugs.
So tonight, from our family to yours, from our home to yours, thank you for joining us.
This is the piece on drugs. We're going. All right, so a mutual friend, TJ, introduced us. You had just met him, and he was my sixth guest on this podcast.
Yeah. Great dude.
Yeah.
I really felt a connection to him when I first met him. And so we were at Gator Bites. And I just met him a few days ago. And like right away, I just felt like this guy needs to talk to somebody. And so him and I and this guy named Mike that I met the same night. And I wasn't even going to stop in there. It was one of those things where you feel kind of led to stop. And then I met TJ, and we just connected right away. And we just spent the day yesterday together hanging out, just dudes, you know?
Yeah.
Girls get together and do girl stuff, so us guys need to have some, guy time. I shared with you earlier, I just lost my fiance girlfriend of 8 years in December to metastatic lung cancer that came from the colon. And so I got to help her in her last days and everything. And now it's just me and my golden retriever. So getting ready to cross the country on a unicycle. You know?
Yeah, that's it's incredible. I want to talk to you about so that's why I got you on this podcast. Why TJ recommended you was what you're about to do. You're leaving on Tuesday to fly out, right?
Yeah, I'm leaving Tuesday to drive over to West Palm and stay with one of my fiance. Her last name's Love. I like to call her Ms. Love because it just sounds cool. I used to joke with her when we got married, that I would take her last name.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, right? Love, that's just cool. So my last name's Mueller, by the way. William Mueller, but I go by Rhino because William's too generic. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, you can go by Willie William, Bill Billy Billiam, Bill Tender because you're a bartender. Ladies call you Tender Bill, but my friends call me Rhino, so that's my story.
And there was a story in the article about why you got the name because of the thick skin you have.
You got to charge ahead, 2-inch thick skin. You know, be an optimist. My only enemy in the real world is poachers. Those are the negative people that try to suck my positive energy. Like I try to give my energy away because it doesn't come from me anyway. I believe it comes from, higher power.
It does. Yeah, actually, that makes me think of something I just read, and I know we're going to get into some religious talks or spiritual talks, but I just read Revelation by Russell Brand, and he was talking about this cool concept that if you just because that consciousness is in the brain, like you can figure out, like if you were to cut pieces of the brain out, you lose certain parts of consciousness, but that doesn't necessarily mean that consciousness that is created by the brain. So imagine if you were a less civilized person and you came across a radio and it was making noise, you'd be like, well, if I cut this wire, it stops making this sound. So clearly this is how this thing works, and you would totally get it wrong. You wouldn't understand that the actual sound was coming from some other source. So our source of energy and power and consciousness, it could easily be coming from somewhere that we can't understand. And that's what God is, or whatever that higher power energy is.
Yeah. I mean, omniscient, omnipotent,
Yeah.
Omniscient, omnipotent, and what's the last one? Omnipresent.
Yeah, the omnipresence of... And if you think about
everywhere, and
it's not
everywhere.
just the consciousness of human beings. I think we share this energy with the consciousness of all living things. It's just this different levels of consciousness.
That's why we connect, like with dolphins. When you meet them, you're instantly, or manatees, you're like, oh. And as you try to get closer to your creator, you get closer to the things that he created, and you start noticing the beauty in trees and the complexity of an anthill and the way bees do what they do. Yes. And I don't know, it just makes like being a kid again, appreciating,
and it's crazy.
Not being a cog in the machine, like removing yourself from that. Like that's why I love working for myself now.
Yeah.
Because I can control, just like you do as a musician and entertainer. Mm-hmm. I feel like I was kind of born to be an entertainer, and I've been doing it for free my whole life. So now when I move to Vegas, I'm going to start doing like amateur stand-up, and maybe it'll pay the bills, maybe it won't, but I just like making people laugh. So
that's great. Yeah, I'm actually starting to work on some stand-up material to promote my podcast. I go to open mic nights but start as like a comedy routine, but then to tell stories about drugs that I've went through and things.
That's what I love to do, is do storytelling. I like to tell a story in such a way verbally so that I could just record it and put it on paper, and that would be like part of my book.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to like manufacture what you want to say, just say it. And then put it on paper. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I think a lot of writers would do, is you would just tell your story the best way you can, and then you go back and edit and make sure it flows the right way. But
especially true stories, because we don't have to worry about character development or anything.
Oh yeah,
like this is all unscripted, uncut, unedited.
Oh yeah, I think it's easier, fun. Or even that's why the best fiction writers pull from their actual experiences.
Makes sense.
Just make even if you're writing fantasy, those characters can be based on people you've met and things that have happened to you to make it feel real.
Yeah, you have to have lived it, and you have to give it some detail and complexity for it to be interesting, especially to anybody that's of superior intellect. If that's your target audience, like I'm not really trying to appeal to the masses. Not everybody's going to get me, and the more I go, the more haters I find. But I just have to ignore them.
The haters are the loudest. So you're probably getting, for every hater, you're getting 10 people that love it. They're just not being loud about it. They're just going with their flow. The haters are nasty and loud, and they want, because they're hurt. What it is it's their own pain that they're
right. It's like they're displacing their aggression. Like when people go in and go off on a server, they're not thinking about the fact that server's a person too.
And I have to consider that when I want to smash those people in the head. I'll get that's a person going through their own battle. They're
Right.
taking it out on the wrong person. They're taking it out on their mother or father or whoever subconsciously, but what they're really doing is hurting some poor server that now is making and then they're going to deal with stress that maybe they take it out on their roommate when they get home. I mean,
Right.
it spreads like a disease,
Yeah.
that negativity.
And back to being a Rhino, that's where I think it's so important to be careful who you associate with. Like they've always said, you got to watch your associations because you become like what you're around, or you can, unless you're extremely strong-willed, to be able to
thicker
resist.
skin you have, and the like you say, if you can have a negative interaction with somebody where somebody's extremely negative and not carry that to your next interaction, that's a great way to live your life. To just immediately, there was Eckhart Tolle in the book talked about this phenomenon with watching ducks fight in a pond. The ducks would fight like crazy, and as soon as the fight was over, they'd flap their wings really hard. That was releasing that energy, and then they would just float serenely in the water. Like if people could be like that, the person's not going to just flap away the energy, like, all right, now I'm fine. They're going to hold grudges, and what am I going to do next to that other person?
Well, have you ever noticed sometimes when two guys manage to actually get in a fight, like they become friends afterwards? Like you got rid of that.
Some guys do that. They'll give daps. A lot of times that's when they were already friends before and they got in a big argument, and then somebody won, like they laughed it off. Then you have other people that just get malicious and they're like, I'm going to come back and
Well, it reminds me, like you think about the 7 deadly sins and how all those sins are just really negative emotions like jealousy and envy and gluttony, and I mean all of it is just like you're not finding the right avenue to release like your problems. You got to face your problems, look in the mirror, and self-actualize. If you don't do that, you're going to have escapes, and you're not going to address the root of the problem. And like they say, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound to cure. You got to address stuff and nip it in the bud before it. Stitch in time saves 9. We could go on with all the.
Oh yeah, one of my favorites is the resentment is like drinking poison and hoping it kills the other guy.
Yeah.
I think who said that might have been on Mandela. But no, one thing I wanted to bring back to what you had just said, I meant to say was when you were talking about the more you get spiritual and into God and seeing all of His creation and marveling at an anthill, whatever else. Mm-hmm. That's one thing I always thought was weird about some of the Christians because I'm from the Bible Belt and my whole family is very religious, but they don't see, and I'm not going to talk about all of them, but it just seems to be in most of the culture with evangelical and Republican is not to care about the environment. That's one thing that and I don't know why that's I hate the right wing. If you're a right wing, you have a list of things you have to believe in. If you're left wing, you have a list of things you have to, and it's like, well, what if you don't believe in, check every box in the list? A lot of people will fall in line on those other issues. I'm not going to. Yeah. If I was a Christian, then I would, and I didn't say I hated abortion, and I'm a Christian. Well, then I'm going to believe the Republicans that way. But that doesn't mean I also have to deny climate change.
Right.
So, but that's a weird thing to me. If you believe God created this earth, wouldn't you want to take care of it and like this is a gift for us to enjoy? Like,
yeah.
This, I mean,
well, I think a lot of times people get so wrapped up in themselves, like it's hard to break through. Like for example, what I'm trying to do with this charity event, I'm trying to raise awareness for 3 charities: Disabled American Veterans, the Firefighter Burn Fund, and Concerns of Police Survivors. Whenever somebody in law enforcement gets killed, they help the surviving family members. They're all highly rated charities, and I'm just trying to raise awareness so people think about give your time if you can't give money, or give money if you can't give your time. Just do what you can where you are with what you have. And so I think if everybody tried to be like a little more philanthropic part-time, just with their spare time, it really is rewarding. It makes you feel better. So it's like you get back as much as you give,
Yeah.
So.
And another thing I want to say about the police officer, because I know the whole country's in a very weird spot with cops. They want to hate police officers and then they, there's a whole list of things to talk. We could go in. We're not going to get into with all that. But one thing, the reason my podcast about the war on drugs I have a lot of different things I want to help change in the world. But the war on drugs is one of the main reasons you have gang violence and gun violence in this country. Mm-hmm. And the cops, the reason they have to go into these horrible, dangerous situations is because they're fighting a drug war that can't be won. And you think about the cartels. Well, we have similar things here in the inner cities. Not as bad as the cartels with the cutting off of heads and stuff. but still people are dying every day and the cops are having to fight that. And I feel like if we could take that aspect out of it, and other countries like Portugal have done that, you stop the war on drugs, you stop...
Pretty much legalize everything, just about.
At least I mean, I'm for legalizing and regulating
Decriminalize,
everything,
yeah.
but you start with decriminalizing. The problem is that the drug gangs will still sort of exist, but like what Baltimore just did, they've stopped arresting for small-time drug dealing and small-time drug possession because they realized when they stopped arresting for those things during COVID to keep people out of jail, that crime went down. It didn't go up. So they were like, all right, we're going to keep this thing going. And I think other places need to realize that if you stop arresting and you can reestablish, the cops can be there to help you. Say, even if drugs weren't legal but were decriminalized, some drug deal goes bad and there's some kind of violent thing, the cops could come and help the situation and not be a third-party enemy of both sides fighting because they're there to arrest drug users. They would be there to stop the violence.
Yeah.
And it would make it safer for our officers on the streets, and they could be really concerned because a lot of officers they get into the police work because they want to do good for their community, help protect people from criminals and other things like that. But most of them end up getting sucked right into help fighting the war on drugs. It's the first thing you're going to start doing is arresting people for pot and pot possession, and if you want to move up to detective, first you're going to start working in narco units, and you're going to work in these horribly dangerous units, going undercover, drug bust. Eliminate that. Why can't they just go into work and do the work they wanted to do when they were a little kid, fighting the bad guys? That's what.
Right.
I mean.
Yeah, the people that steal and all that.
Yeah, people that steal and rape and murder
yeah.
and beat their wives, and like let's get the dangerous people out of society. And also, once you get those dangerous people out of society, let's not torture them in a prison. Let's get them some help, rehabilitation.
Right.
Let's make our whole society safer and healthier.
Yeah, well, like I mentioned earlier, I'm 53 now, but 35 years ago when I first moved to Tampa to go to college, I was 18. And I was in a club blowing off some steam across the street at my apartment. I'd started my waterbed on a slow fill. The year's 1986, so waterbeds were still happening.
Oh, right.
And so I was filling my waterbed, and I knew I had about 3 hours to kill, so I went across the street to this dance club. And I'm on the floor doing some tricks, and the crowd clears, and I'm going haywire, doing flips and walking handstands. So the owner of the club gets on the mic and he's like, "Get off the floor." Well, the whole crowd booed him. So he got mad and called his buddy, because he used to be a Hillsborough County Sheriff's officer himself, the owner of the club, and he was mad that his crowd booed him. So he called the sheriff's officer to come arrest me before I even knew what was going on. He comes out on the floor, grabs me by my arm. I'm like, "Whoa, I'll leave." I get outside and there's an officer waiting for me. He's like, "You're under arrest." And I said, "What for, officer?" And he said, "Disorderly intoxication." I said, "Well, I haven't had anything to drink. I'm drinking orange juice." And I said, "Can you give me a breathalyzer? I got to be at work at 6 a.m. and I live across the street in those apartments. My waterbed's going to flood if I don't shut it off." He's like, "I don't give a F about your waterbed." And he grabs my arm and went to cuff me. And in that moment, I'm like, number one, this is false arrest. I didn't do anything wrong. And if I don't go home and shut off my waterbed, it's going to flood my apartment. So I took off running. Well, when he chased after me, he tripped over his own feet and landed on the ground. And when he got on the radio, I heard what he said later. I was told. He said, "Officer down, all units respond." So 12 units came to my apartment complex. 3 of them were canine units. And they went into every single unit to try to bust for drugs, even though they saw the unit that I went into. And then when they found me hiding behind the wall, the officer who had already tripped also managed to get kicked as he was trying to bust his way in my friend's apartment. So when he found me, he broke my wrist with his bare hands, cuffed me, and threw me down a flight of stairs. Long story short, the trauma from that incident made me so paranoid of the police that a month later, when I came back to Tampa to try to get an attorney, because they were charging me with assault and battery on a police officer, and I didn't even touch them. They took me to a local park and surrounded the car with other cars and spent 20 or 30 minutes getting their story straight, which is totally illegal as well.
Oh, yeah.
So I got released on my own recognizance a few hours later, and went and got checked out at the hospital and went home. There's an eviction notice on my door. I got 3 days to vacate, so I withdrew from college, quit both my jobs. I was a fine dining waiter at some international hotel near the airport, and I delivered pizzas at night, and I studied robotics during the day. So anyway, all that was over. But I came back a month later to try to get an attorney, and that one night, as I was leaving this parking lot of a club, there's a cop car comes flying in. Well, he's not there for me, but I don't know that. And standard procedure, he's going to try to pull me over because I'm the only car leaving. So that confirms in my brain, oh, he's after me. So I take off, and before it was over, I busted through 6 roadblocks and totaled 2 cop cars. Now, the guideline system called for 5 years of probation, but my judge was named Harry Lee Cove III, the hanging judge, and he gave me 5 years in prison, followed by 15 years of probation.
Oh, shit.
So,
that's crazy. And you were 18?
18, yeah.
Wow.
But I became a certified tutor, a certified welder, board of Al-Anon, board of JC's. I even had a guard pull me over and pull me off the yard one day, and he's like, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I'm sorry, officer, I don't understand." He's like, "Are you an actor?" He's like, "Are you researching a role?" And I'm like, no, I'm convict number 107963, you know? But that's the nicest thing anybody ever said to me. To have a guard, as when you're a convict in prison, tell you that you don't belong there and ask you if you're an actor.
Yeah.
I mean, it was pretty cool, you know? So anyway, I just wanted to share that because I'm not embarrassed at all or stick.
But you were stuck with the felony charge on your record?
Oh, yeah.
Is it still there?
Yeah. So when I became a mortgage broker, I had to hire an attorney to have the right to be a mortgage broker because they tried to deny my license. And
See, that's crazy. You did your time, which the whole thing could be argued that you were that you weren't. There was a whole messed up situation. Also, you're 18. We put too much pressure on 18-year-olds to be complete adults in every decision they make. When I was 18, I was an idiot. Just the things that I did. Luckily, I didn't get caught with some of them. I could have definitely went to prison for some of the some of the crazy driving and drinking.
And I feel like my punishment should have been the beating I got because when the car chase was over, they pulled me out the window and threw me in a ditch and broke my jaw and knocked out 3 of my teeth. And they were beating me with their nightsticks. And if the ambulance hadn't got there when it did, I probably wouldn't be talking to you right now. Yeah. So that should have been my punishment, but
we'll see. You should have never been in trouble in the first place when they called the club owner called the cops and
right. It was definitely a domino effect. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. I mean, there's times when I was arrested when I was a kid for like pot possession, where all of a sudden I'm stuck with a charge where it's like the cops should have never found the pot plant anyway. They weren't looking for that. Like it was just a bunch of crazy things that lead to these situations, but. When you're 18, you're stuck with this record. So you do, and how many years you say you ended up doing? 2?
I got out in about 2 for good behavior. Yeah.
So for 2 years in federal prison and stuck with the felony, but your time's not done. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Your time should be done at that point. You've done your time. You're done. Go back to your life. But you can't because all the careers and the things you wanted to do, you have to now fight the idea you had a felony. And I know because I've had 2 misdemeanors, which isn't even nearly as bad, but has still kept me out of jobs.
Yeah.
And had it been a felony, see, a lot of the jobs I've hired only ask for about felony. So I could just say no. So
right.
I had that luxury. But some jobs would say any crime you must have put on there. And I would just gamble and hope they don't do a criminal check and just say no because I know if I say yes, there's too many people applying for the job. And a few times I would get hired and then a week later they'd be like, oh, this came back, you're fired.
Yeah, right. It's awful.
Yeah.
Man, crazy.
It is. But let's talk more about this. Really what we got to get into is what you're about to do, because this is, to me, and probably anybody listening, it's a crazy thing. It's a cool thing. But also I was thinking it's very crazy that you're doing it starting in June in the desert.
Yeah.
So you're going Nevada to Florida. You're not going north where it's going to get cooler. You're going to go hotter.
So in 2019, I went from the Space Needle in Seattle to the Golden Gate Bridge. I went to Tacoma to Portland, through the forest to Oregon, the Pacific Coast Highway, and all the way down.
It's a beautiful ride, probably.
Oh, it was great. The only problem was I don't have any gears and there's no coasting. And on that trip, I didn't have a brake. So your legs are your brakes, on one wheel,
So you're going downhill or up and down?
Up and down. And sometimes it was too steep to go up, so I'd have to push it. And it was too steep to go down, so I had to push it. Because it's like a flywheel, all that weight. I had 65 pounds of gear on it, in addition to me. Because I had my driver back out a week before the trip. And I literally felt like it was like the devil trying to stop me. So I'm like, no, I'm going to build a luggage rack, and I'm going to learn how to ride this carry and everything. So it took me 7 weeks to go 1,000 miles. But
you were carrying 60 pounds, it said, right?
Yeah, 65 pounds.
Yeah.
But the whole, the 7th week, my brother Dennis surprised me, and he drove up to Eureka, which is about 300 miles north of the Golden Gate, and he met me and carried all my stuff in his truck. So I was able to go 300 miles in 1 week, where it took me 6 weeks to go 700 miles. So it's like more than triple without carrying stuff. So that's why this time I have drivers. But anybody out there listening, I'm still kind of looking for that one person that really clicks, that wants to go on an adventure. Maybe you're taking a semester off school. Maybe you just withdrew from school. Maybe you're waiting to go to school. Come on along. I'm taking care of all the food and board and all that.
And how can they reach you?
Definitely going to be an adventure. Best way is Instagram at Rhino Ventures. RhinoVentures at Rhino Ventures.
Also mentioned at the beginning of my podcast.
And my phone number's on there, and my my Facebook and all that. It's easy to get a hold of me.
Because I was going to ask you about the driver, because it said you're a driver. So you right now have multiple drivers.
I do have people lined up, but the issue is some of them want me to pay them, and it's like, I'm not getting paid for this. This is costing me a bunch of money because I'm taking 6 months off work.
Right.
But I felt like it's something I had to do. It's like a mission, and I tried to deny it, and I went back to work as a manager at Red Lobster, and I was just not liking it. Because that's not where I was supposed to be.
No, yeah.
So I left there and I went to Amazon, got in shape, and then I just kind of stepped out on Matthew 6:26, which says, like, look how he takes care of the birds in the air and the flowers of the field, and how much better we take care of us.
So talking about the company Amazon you worked for.
Yeah, I was working for them before I went on the trip. So I ended up saving up maybe about a month's worth of expenses. And when I was just about to be broke, strangers started stopping me and giving me money, like without me asking. And hotel owners saying, hey, I'm up the road. When you get there, you can stay for free. And restaurant owners and homeless people giving me Red Bulls. And it was amazing how generous everybody was.
It is, and yeah, people they love to help when they can.
Yeah,
Definitely.
and one of my biggest problems has been I'm not good at asking for help. And so I have to kind of overcome that because I definitely could use the help.
Yes, and you also have a GoFundMe.
I do.
And
yeah,
what's
I
that?
have a
What's
GoFundMe
that?
too. Well, they give you like a code. I mean, my name's William Rhino Mueller, so I think it would pop up like that, but I should have been prepared for that.
Well, you know what we'll do
we can
is,
put it.
have you send it to me, and I always do an intro, so
Okay.
I'll throw it up on the intro.
Okay, you could like do a link or whatever.
Yep.
So cool.
But yeah, so try to get my guests to try to help you with that, and I'll also donate to that as well.
Oh, awesome. So my plan is to do 50 miles a day, 5 days a week.
And so you're going from Nevada to Florida. Is there going to be
Yeah.
any mountains, or is that all flat pretty much?
No, it's not all flat, but I think the worst is over because going from Seattle to the Golden Gate, there was a lot of, heavy duty elevation changes. And here I'm going to be going from Las Vegas to Lake Havasu City, where I used to live in Arizona. That's where the London Bridge is. If y'all remember that nursery rhyme, London Bridge is falling down, well, it literally was falling apart, and England sold it to the owner of the McCulloch Chainsaw
So the
Corporation.
actual London Bridge is now in Arizona.
Yeah, and it's mostly, I think, they built the foundation of it, and then they skinned it with all the original granite. I don't know if they actually used all the granite blocks, but it is, made from the London Bridge. So, anyway, I lived there for 8 years, and so I want to go back there, and my brother Dennis just recently retired as the fire chief of Lake Havasu, and he's in Vegas, which is where I plan on moving to when I'm done with my trip.
Okay.
So that's one of the reasons why I'm leaving Las Vegas. Instead of leaving the Golden Gate, where I ended my first 1,000 miles, there's a lot of desert in between. So what I'm doing is adding those 500 and something miles that I'm missing between San Fran and Las Vegas and making my route kind of circuitous. I might even dip up into Colorado some, or I might go deeper down into Texas.
Oh, so you don't actually have I was going to ask you about your route. You don't have a
No,
definite plan.
I mean, I have the general idea and I know what I'm planning on doing, but I also know that every day I kind of like to pray, like lead me where I'm supposed to go. And I might meet some farmer that says, hey, I go to the VFW, we'll put on a fish fry dinner for you and the proceeds will go to help you pay for your trip. I mean, stuff like that just happens. So I want to be able to, change.
That's cool.
But I plan on being on I-40, Route 66, I-40 for a lot of the way. I'm going to have to, after going through Phoenix, because that's the home of Circle K and they're my biggest sponsor right now. And unicycle.com is also a national sponsor. And then I have local sponsors. So for example, in Lee County, which is Fort Myers, Naples, Fort Myers Beach. No, not Naples, that's Collier, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, but Cape Coral and Fort Myers and all, and beaches is all part of Lee County. So I'm selling ads on a local jersey because I'm going to be here for a week. The end of August, I'm going to have some get-togethers like at Gator Bites, which is an advertiser, Shuckers in the Cottage, which is an advertiser, and then I'm working on a few more right now. And GM Event Productions, my nephew, DJ G Ride from the Lonnie Kai. DJ G Ride. Anyway, so
you do good. You do that very well.
he's my nephew.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Because I was looking at this, at the route that you possibly would take. It looks like you Arizona, New Mexico, and you smoke sativa.
Yeah. It helps me focus. I think I definitely think I have ADHD, but I was never diagnosed. I had it before there was a name for it. I've always just been like dealing with learning how to think of 5 things at once, and your brain's going 100 miles an hour, and you got to like slow it down. And the sativa just helps me do that. And I don't take any pharmaceutical medication. And some people maybe think I should, but
I think if sativa works, it's way healthier than any of these SSRIs or Adderall or any of that stuff.
Well, look at any magazine, and the first page of the ad for like restless leg syndrome is going to show some happy family. But if you read the next 3 pages, it's all disclaimers on how it might make you promiscuous, it might make you gamble. So I'd rather have my wife have some restless legs than be cheating on me and spending all of our money, right?
Right.
Because that just leads to divorce. That's not cool.
Yeah. And but I was going to ask you though is if you're self-medicating with marijuana, you start in Nevada through Arizona, New Mexico, you're good to go.
Yeah.
Then you hit Texas.
Yeah.
No pot there. Or is it just not that they know about, or is it just like you're just gonna go sober?
Well, here's what's totally cool. One of the apps on my phone is couch surfing. Another one is warm showers. All I gotta do is put the little story out there. Hey, I'm crossing the country on a unicycle. I'm gonna be in Albuquerque. I want to stay for 2 nights. Will anybody pick me up? And so basically somebody or multiple people will say, yeah, you can come stay here. And then in exchange, I'll just story tell, or I'll put in a garbage disposal for them. I do plumbing and electrical and stuff. So I'll do whatever. I don't care.
Yeah.
But, and even if my drivers back out, I'm still doing it. It's just going to take me longer.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like my mission, you know. Like I said, I lost my fiance, and you know, my kids are grown, and my wife's my ex-wife, and so, you know, I'm just free to do whatever.
Yeah.
So.
But again, about the because once you about keeping your marijuana, do you have your medical card here?
No, but if I lived here, I would.
Okay, because we do have ours here. Well, I had mine, and then it expired. I'm waiting to get my carry permit, and it's the whole thing with that.
And it's not like I don't wake and bake every day, but I've noticed that when I do have a little bit of sativa, it really does help me focus and I get more done. It doesn't make me tired and lazy and lay around. Like,
oh, no, me neither.
And I'm trying to keep like 8 balls in the air right now between training for this ride, selling advertising for this ride, doing some work to make more money, trying to get it out there, you know, taking care of Schnarf, my golden retriever.
Schnarf.
And then just friends that need help with stuff or whatever, you know.
Yeah, I was going to say this. I wanted to give this guy a shout out. On Twitter, I follow Tom Engel, I think is his name. But he just released, or he does all these great posts on marijuana changes in the country. But he said they just did a study, and people that regularly smoke marijuana are a certain amount of percentage more likely to run every day or exercise.
Oh, cool.
I was like, I believe that, because when I smoke weed, I love going to the gym and going for bike rides. And if I got really hungover and I don't feel like smoking in the morning, I'm less likely to go to the gym.
Exactly. And the other thing I want to say when it comes to unicycling is it's like when you're doing it, you're always falling, but you don't fall, because you're basically falling in all directions, but you're always correcting yourself. So you become like a human Segway, and you feel like you're floating. So it's like, I like to say it's like getting high without getting high. Yeah. But then if you enjoy also getting high, then you can definitely do it while you're high. So,
oh, right. Yeah. I do like that. I wanted to do a segment on this called Getting High in Your Own Supply, which is to promote, you know, sobriety. But you can do things that are so amazing with the chemicals in your own brain that'll adrenaline rush things. I like skydiving personally. I've only done it once, but we're going again in Key West in June.
Oh, awesome.
Have you been skydiving?
No, but I'd like to.
You'd love it.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you haven't went.
I want to go jump off a mountain in a flying squirrel suit.
Yeah, see, that's the kind of shit that I would never do.
But
I
I'm
can see you doing.
I mean, my plan would be that's a little too risky for me even right now, because I'm like perfectly healthy. But if I was to get metastatic cancer and they said, hey, you got 1 to 3 years to live, I, you know, let my boys know and my family and friends. And then I would go buy a flying squirrel suit and go jump off some mountains. I wouldn't try to kill myself, but I'd be willing to.
That is one of those sports, though, that if you're kind of trying to kill yourself, I mean, it's not your goal, but
right.
You know the chances aren't most of the people that were like big, successful in that, almost all of them dead now?
Yeah, I really haven't looked into it, but
somebody
I've
told me
heard.
that. I'm not sure that's true. I've not fact-checked that.
Well, and I think the thing is like to quit when you're ahead. Like, nobody should ever be a criminal, but when people do go do like jewelry heists and stuff, you got to just stop. If you got away with it, don't ever tell anybody, stop, and then go back to a normal life. Like, I mean, stealing and cheating and lying, none of that's good anyway.
It's not good. And stop while you're ahead, but also just stop.
Yeah. And, you know, it's amazing how little, like, I'm starting to try to minimalize, and I really believe that everything that's material is immaterial. Like, the intangible is what's important, you know, like our spirit and love for other people and love for yourself, and, you know, just trying to do the right thing. And it's not about keeping points and who's a better person.
No, it isn't.
You know?
People, a lot of people, when they go spiritual, they turn it into that. All right, now how can I make this about me?
Right.
It's not like that. That's what actually Russell Brand's book was about. His whole book was about reconnecting with the sacred. Mm-hmm. And he's a big 12-step person because he went through a lot of drug addiction. So he's completely sober now. So his whole thing is, you know, he thinks that our whole culture is just disconnected with the sacred, with his communion with God, and he's just like, we live in a world that's so material that we forget. Like when you buy a ribeye steak, you don't even realize where that comes from. It comes in a package at a grocery store. Mm-hmm. That was in a living animal at one point that was breathing.
Right, we're all disconnected from that because we're not butchering
and
our own
I am
animals.
too. I'm disconnected from it too. Yeah. I'm not trying to say if you're going to eat meat, it'd be better to hunt it yourself. Yeah. And I do eat meat. I try to eat less meat. I try to eat a vegetarian diet. Sometimes I make my own vegetarian burgers. I also eat regular burgers because they're delicious, and I also think we need meat, some level of it. But
we're supposed to be omnivores, so it's good to have a mix of everything. I feel like your body tells you what you need. Like I go with whatever I'm craving. Like one of the benefits of unicycling so much is that I can pretty much eat whatever I want and not really gain weight, especially when I'm exercising every day.
Right.
So, and then I noticed that my resting heart rate will go down to like 45. And so I know that my heart's healthy and all that. And I'm 53, but I feel like I'm 23 and act like I'm 13. And I just think that's a good way to live, man.
It's a great way to live.
Yeah. So every day, man, I just end up meeting new people. And I don't go around, I guess, giving off the vibe that I'm some kind of like hippie guru or something. But I can tell you I have a lot of appreciation for people that grew up in that era, and they're out there today. They're the people that are in their 60s and stuff. So like, it's cool to talk to them. I love talking to my elders and learning things.
It's great. Also, I think that's why we're seeing some of these changes across the country with marijuana reform. Is some of these hippies are in charge now. It doesn't mean that there's a lot of fighting up there with what's going to be illegal, but it has a lot to do with, I think, big pharma profiting.
Yeah, special interest groups.
Yeah,
and
they want to control things. But marijuana reform has been amazing. It's happening everywhere. Now it's happening in some of these southern states. Louisiana just passed a bill. Alabama's working on a medical bill.
I thought Georgia might have medical too, maybe, or not quite as.
I think
free
it might
as
be
here.
going. It might be going to the board. I'm not sure about Georgia, but all these states, except for the ones I'm from North Carolina, they haven't done anything about it yet. Of course, the federal government's supposed to. This is how many days in the Biden's administration where all he's done for the war on drugs is fire people that have worked for him for previous smoking pot, and he's going to ban menthol cigarettes. That's all he's done.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. My buddy Brandon's like, oh, you're mad because a politician lied to you to get your votes. Is that the first time it's happened? I'm like, yeah, touche.
Yeah. True.
Yeah. So you're gonna do? Oh, I was gonna ask you this too. Is 3,000 miles a world record for a unicycle?
No, actually, a guy that I met online named Ed Pratt a few years ago actually spent 3 years on a unicycle going around the world.
Oh, he did all the way around the world.
He had to fly to different locations,
of course.
obviously, but I believe he went across Australia. He went through like Kazakhstan and all that. He went through across the United States, and I forget all the countries he went through. I haven't watched all of the videos and stuff that he's done, but he did it for a charity that had to do with like helping underprivileged kids with school supplies and stuff.
Oh,
and I think some U.S. citizen actually donated like 300 and something grand to the cause. So they got, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure it was a huge amount like that. And so it was very effective. And part of my motivation is just to try to make a difference. And I love to unicycle. I don't necessarily love to unicycle 50 miles a day, 5 days a week, but I feel like that's my contribution. Like that's my sacrifice, like my blood, literally blood, sweat, and tears that are going to go into this trip, because I know there's going to be challenges. That's part of the adventure. But I know that, it's not all on my power. Like, I feel like if I was relying on my own power, I wouldn't have the nerve to do this, but I feel like this is something I'm supposed to do. Like the old Blues Brothers movie, like I'm on a mission from God.
Yeah.
That's what I feel like, man. I got planted in my head. I couldn't get it out. So now I'm just doing it. So
that's great, man. It's very, it's inspiring. It's also, I think it's crazy. I mean, it's again, awesome. So you're going to end up in, Key West is one of my favorite places. Yeah. I love Key West. So you're going to end up there, and then what, you get on a plane from there, go back to Vegas?
Well, no, because ideally I'll still have my car with me, because it'll be following me. Now, I'm not going to have it follow me every day. I'm going to actually have it go ahead of me 25 miles. I'll meet you for lunch. Go ahead another 25 miles. I'll meet you for dinner. Or some variation of that, because actually in the desert I plan on, after the first day, which I'll leave at a normal hour, so I can have a little group, send me off. Every day after that, I'm going to leave super early before it's even light, before it's baking hot, and ride for 2 or 3 hours, and then in the evening, late in the evening, ride a couple more to get my 50 miles a day in. Because it would be, asinine to ride in the heat of the day in the desert. Like,
yeah, that's what I
it
was
just
wondering.
doesn't really make sense. So whenever I can do that, I will. And the only time I'm going to have the car follow me is if there's like a treacherous, blind curves and that kind of stuff, because otherwise I don't want somebody having to follow me at 10 miles an hour.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, hard on the car, and just go ahead and do your thing. Like they could help me by contacting local media in the next town, by sending out the press release in front of us, or selling advertising in the next big city that we're going to be in a few weeks, because I plan on having local jerseys and shirts made for bigger cities to help me to raise money to pay for this trip, because it's costing a lot of money.
Yeah, no. So when you come through Florida, which route will you taking, the east or west coast?
Well, I plan on going down the west coast and coming through like Tampa and coming down to Fort Myers. Okay. And not so much going on the east coast, and then going all the way down 41 through Naples, and then
that's what I would do. Yeah, definitely.
So I plan on being here for a week.
You'll be doing, when you come through here, I'm sure there'll be I want to be there for that. Is what
awesome.
I'm saying.
Yeah, I plan on having a couple different events. Like I said, we'll have a get together at Gator Bites and a get together at like Shuckers / the Cottage. because I just like those places. It's a cool place to go. Plus, you know, they're supportive because they bought advertising on the local jersey. So I'll be selling shirts at the venues when I'm here in town, and the plan is the last week of August. Now, if I end up having driver problems, you know, may not be till September. I mean, it could change, but I just got to do the best I can, you know.
So the plan is tentatively is September 11th in Key West.
Yeah, to end up there, and that'll take me about 6 days to get there from here.
I'll tell you what I really like to do is be in Key West, because me and my wife got married last year, September 12th in Key West.
Oh, no way.
So like anniversary, September 12th, or go down there 11th, Key West,
Yeah.
see your thing, and then we could spend the 12th together.
Yeah.
So that's what you just made our plans. We're gonna be in
Perfect.
Boston for a week, the week before. So we'll have to figure that out. But yeah.
So yeah, once again, I think I might have mentioned it earlier, but if there's anybody out there that any of this resonates with you and you want to go on like a 3-month adventure, I'd love to just have one driver the entire way and not have to like make exchanges a month in, because then I'm dealing with like round trip airline tickets and all that, and it's like, I'm not getting paid for this. This is costing me money. And so unless a bunch of donators or some philanthropist steps up and says, hey, here's 5, here's 10,000 to help with all this, you know, it would be ideal to have one person do the whole trip.
Somebody's wanting to go on an adventure now.
Yeah,
I would think you'd find somebody that's just wanting to experience something. I mean,
I even thought about contacting the Disabled American Veterans, which I've already spoke to them and said, hey, can you put out a feeler and see if anybody's that's actively retired that would like to go on an adventure like this, and we'll just have a great time together. Because I can't afford to pay somebody a salary while I'm doing this.
Right.
It's like,
yeah, it has to be someone who's willing to just hit the road and not make money, not just whatever it costs to be on the road.
Mm-hmm.
But like you say, you're going to try to raise money, and also with the funds that you raise, it'll also help food, stuff like that could be paid for.
Right. Yeah, and I still have normal bills like any person. I got to pay car insurance. I got to buy gas. I got to get
Cell
food.
phone.
Cell phone. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So oh yeah, I love this thing. I was trying to look at this list of things you said. You said when I'm riding and I feel like I'm one with the universe, that's when I feel closest to God.
Yeah.
I love that, because it reminded me of the first. Because like I say, the idea of finding whatever it is that when you feel that oneness. And for me, like I've had those experiences on drugs when I did mushrooms and
Which I've never tried, by the way. I've had a number of people share with me that they think it'd be, that I'd be perfect for that or whatever. It's just nothing I've experimented with. I've really been content with just the only thing that I do that's not legal everywhere is a little bit of marijuana, and usually it's sativa.
Well, if you wanted to try mushrooms
helps me
legally,
focus.
there are places now in Denver and other places where you can now do legal weed with like a therapist. Mushrooms.
Yeah, like microdosing. They do.
No, they'll actually do like a full mushroom trip, and in a therapist setting, and you can.
Oh, that's cool.
It is cool, because a lot of people's first experience with psychedelics is with some punk kid that says you got to try this. Here's a bunch of drugs, and then you're out of your mind, and you might not like it, and you might end up. Happened to one of my friends who woke his parents up in the middle of the night and said he had to go to the hospital because he took too much LSD, and his parents were like, what the hell? And that was his first experience, and that shouldn't be your first experience. But I remember we did him on the beach here, and my buddy was like, we all went into the Gulf, we're swimming around in the water, and he's just like, hey, you realize that like this water is connected to every other body of like ocean on the planet, and that the current we're feeling is just part of currents moving through the whole world. And I just took that thought and submerged my ears into the water and just floated. And I just remember being at one with the whole universe. And that oneness I find when I play music. It's not just through drugs. Drugs are a way, if you've never experienced that can take you there faster. Meditation's a way, but meditation takes practice and learning. People get bored, like, this isn't doing anything.
Or there's too many distractions.
Too many distractions. Yeah. But if you have something you love to do, a lot of people meditate every day and they don't realize it because they're doing it within the thing that they love to do. For me, that's playing music. You
kind of you get in the flow or the zone.
You get in the flow and everything else is shut off. I think people that people that are carpenters, bring up the Jesus thing. Like when you get really into woodworking or whatever it is you're doing, if you're really into it, everything else is shut off. The world is quiet. That's that oneness, that communion with God, and that's what you're talking about with your unicycle. You get that moment, and that's also the runner's high. If you're into running, you're gonna get that point when you're just in that flow, and you get that extreme buzz. I get it when I meditate, just this feeling of just that. It's like this energy that we all have inside of us, and you actually, when you feel that oneness, it's because it flows through everything. I mean, it's the energy.
Well, and people can pick it up too, because like here lately, probably because I'm on a mission that I'm really passionate about this, and like I have to be my own promoter right now, so it's kind of hard to promote yourself without seeming douchey. unless you just, that's why I got like a little tape measure, gag. It'll go 6 feet before it drops, so I can pass up my business card out of my window to a car next to me or off my unicycle. And it's fun.
cool.
I'll be at a stoplight and somebody will start talking. I'll say, hey, listen, I'm listening to Pink Floyd right now, or I'm on the phone. Here's my card, follow me on Instagram. I don't know. I mean, like, you have to kind of have no shame, because there's nothing to be ashamed about anyway, but I know that what I do is different, but I'm being my best self. Like, this is what I'm supposed to do. So I feel best when I'm riding a unicycle. So if I can get paid for doing that, that's my ultimate goal when I'm done with all this, is either to start my own charity, and I want to ensure that 90% of every dollar goes directly to, like, disabled veterans, for example, if that's what I dedicate it all to, or a third and third and third, because my overhead would be extremely low. I don't need a physical location. I don't need a fancy vehicle. If I bring in, $1 million in a year, then a maximum of 100,000 would pay all my expenses and for me to live on.
Yeah.
Instead of like these charities that are like eating it all up with huge salaries and all that, and
There's good
$billion.
charities.
Why do you need a $500 million, building for your cancer society or whatever it may be? There's just, it's just all bloated and inflated, and it's like, I feel like the world shouldn't be part of the charitable, side of things. Should just be different, but it's not.
Should.
It's run like a business, and the salaries are just as high as the private sector sometimes. So
Yeah, they are. I'm going to ask you this: what is your connection with veterans, for that being your cause? Everybody has their cause they're fighting for. Mine's the war on drugs. That's what I'm fighting. What brings you to the veterans?
Well, for me, it's just it incorporates so many things. So many homeless people are veterans living under bridges. They were in Nam, or they're in some other conflict where they got PTSD and they just can't function like a normal person. So they're living on the street, and maybe they have a pet, so they can't even stay in a shelter. And I ran across this in Seattle and Portland, and
I never even thought about that. That's so crazy. But but people, just because you're homeless doesn't mean, if you're an animal lover, you're still gonna have those pets. And
so how hard would it be to throw up like an 8-foot, 6-foot chain link fence outside these places where it's possible, and let people,
if you have a pet, you keep your dog
put them
back
in there
here,
or whatever. I don't know. There's got to be some answers.
There's a lot, and there's another thing with the drug use. If you're homeless and you're using drugs, and they won't let you use it in the shelter, so that's another reason they'll sleep on the streets, is they have to have their heroin. And some other countries are like, yeah, you can let them do their drugs in there.
Right.
I mean, if they have a dog, have a place for the dog. We got to do more to help the homeless. And also the PTSD thing you just said, they're doing a lot of research with MDMA and seeing a lot of extremely positive results with helping to cure PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
I also agree with this other study I said that that is great, and we should definitely do that. But we should also be trying to figure out how to make a more peaceful world where we don't have soldiers going and coming back with PTSD. Some of these battles we need to figure out. Some of them are pointless.
Mm-hmm.
Some things do have to happen. I don't believe that we should just stop going to war altogether. We definitely should if we can, but there's certain conflicts that are happening.
Right.
And it's not as easy as just say, everybody just be peaceful, chill out. That's not how it works, unfortunately.
And the other thing is not just like homeless, that just touches the surface, but also you've got in the PTSD, but you also have, missing limbs, and you've got,
and they come back and they're not taken care of.
Yeah, exactly. And not well enough.
No.
It's my understanding that it's been better for some, but depending on what your living situation is and that kind of thing, like it might be hard to even get to the clinic or whatever to get the help. But there's no easy answers to all that stuff. But my oldest brother was in the Navy, and my dad was in the Army, and my grandfather was in the service, and then my fiance who passed away, she was in the Air Force for 10 years, and her son just got out of the Navy for 7 years.
You're very, very close with military.
Yeah, and then fire as well, because my oldest brother retired as a fire chief, and my other brother Gary passed away, and he was a fireman in the Cape for 20 years. And
was he the one that got paralyzed?
Yeah, and he fell off the deck of his house, 2-story deck, and broke his neck in 3 places and severed his spine at T3. So he was paralyzed from the chest down, and I was able to, quit my job and break up with my girlfriend and move in with him and his wife and take care of him for a couple of years until he passed away. But 2 months before he died, we did an event where I rode 100 miles in a day on my unicycle, and 17 of his firemen friends and brothers and sisters from down here drove up in a 30-year-old fire truck and followed me in Atlanta. And we ended up raising a total of $8,000 to help buy him a used van. And then, unfortunately 2 months later he passed away. But that kind of,
But he got to see you do that, and that's great. And also, go ahead.
Well, he was able to he was in a wheelchair for 2 years, and he never wanted to be 2 days in a wheelchair. So for him, he gave it enough time to where he felt like, okay, this isn't how I'm going to live my life. And I feel like he made a choice, like I'm done. And about a week later, he was done.
But he didn't take his own life. He just
No,
stopped.
no. I just think he stopped wanting to live, and I think that maybe it was coincidence, and I don't know if he got septic or what, but in the end, it was like quick.
Yeah, I guess once you really lose that will.
Yeah.
And I think that's the universe can be compassionate. I guess I don't know how that exactly works.
Yeah, I mean,
but
suffering for a long time is definitely not.
it's not a
Not
way
a
to
good
go.
way to go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
So 100. You did 100 miles in one day.
Hmm. And then a couple years later, when my youngest son was 14, Jake, he learned how to unicycle a couple years before that, and he and I did a 100-mile ride down here in Lee County. Went from deep in the Cape over to FGCU and all around and out to the beach, and we ended the ride out there at the beach. And he did 100 miles too when he was 14 and did it with me.
And how long does that take? 100 miles.
10 to 12 hours.
It's a long day though.
Yeah, it's definitely.
The longest I've done on my bicycle is probably about 40 miles in a day. Just going
That's,
from
that's
here
still
all over
good
Sanibel
though.
and stuff.
Yeah, that's still really good. And there's no coasting on the unicycle, so you're always pedaling of some sort. But yeah.
There's a lot of coasting when I'm riding.
And it's nice that it's flat here because I mean when you're climbing hills, going down the hill, you don't get to just coast freely like you do on a bike. You kind of gotta apply back pressure to your legs or use a brake so you can slow yourself down.
Yeah. So if you were going up and over the Sanibel Bridge, would you just walk it the whole way, or do you?
No, I ride over the whole thing.
Really?
Yeah, I just recently went over it a couple times and it's fun. Good.
Now, do you ride? If you were to ride from here to you'd ride from here to Sanibel? Because that one stretch of Summerlin, I guess if you're riding all over the country, there's gonna be lots of stretches like that.
Yeah, where I just have to I don't like to take the lane because I'm only going like 10 miles an hour. You know what I mean? Whereas if on my unicycle, so like take the lane means like go out into the lane and kind of claim it.
Oh, I got you.
So because people are supposed to give you 3 feet. So the problem is when you ride off the side of the road like I do, if there's a shoulder, I'll ride in the shoulder. And then people don't always give you 3 feet. They zip by you like they're not even acknowledging you. So that can be a little scary. Like on my first 1,000 miles, I got blown off the road twice by like double logging trucks that blew by, and just the wind from it flew me in the ditch.
Wow.
But with the cool thing, speaking of weed, the second time that happened, I got back up to the street with my unicycle and I started walking. I saw somebody pulled up ahead of me like quarter mile and pulled over. So I thought maybe they saw my wreck and were making sure I was okay. So I waved and gave them the okay symbol, and they just stayed there. So I trotted up there, and it was this young lady, and she told me that she works in the medicinal marijuana business, basically selling scales, like precision scales for weighing weed and all that. So she's like, I'm going up to the next town, and if you want, come along, I'll give you a ride. And I'd banked about 20 or 30 miles extra because I just spent a couple days riding around Portland and keeping track of my mileage, so I could kind of use that if I ever wanted to have a little break and not feel like I'm cheating, because I don't want to cheat, So she gave me a ride to the next town, and she went to the health food store, unbeknownst to me, and got me like coconut water and organic dates and all this. And I let her know that I'm, serious with somebody, just in case there was any thought that I was trying to pick up on her. And she asked me, she's like, do you partake? And I'm like, oh yeah. She's like, awesome. So after she was done working, we got together, and it's going to sound crazy, but we watched this laser light show that was done to Mamma Mia. I don't know who came up with that. They were probably...
Like Mamma Mia, the kids?
Mamma Mia, the movie, like the music. It's like a movie.
Is it a musical? I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's. I guess it is
like,
a musical.
like in a planetarium.
Yeah, like outside, and anyway, it was cool, but seems hard to kind of picture that. That would be cool.
Yeah, I've been to the indoor planetarium laser shows.
Yeah, this was outdoor.
So it was more like you could see. It wasn't just like the lasers you saw out. But I've not been to an outdoor laser show unless you count the concerts like Pink Floyd, where there's laser beams.
But it was cool because, like, once again, it was just an example of somebody going out of their way to help you. And then, I got to where I learned to, like, let people help me if they were offering. Instead of me asking, I wasn't actually asking or putting out a tip jar or anything. People would just, hey, what are you doing? And why are you doing it? And do you need any help? And then I'd be like, well, if you want. And whenever somebody tries to give me money, I always clarify, like, is this for one of the charities? Because I'm trying to raise awareness for the charities. I'm not collecting donations for the charities. That would be crazy. Not when you can just go to DAV.org, or the IAFF Burn Foundation. Like, you go to Concerns of Police Survivors, you just type it in, and then you go donate. Like, why would I be in the middle of that? I'm just trying to make people think of these 3 charities.
Yeah, you're raising awareness for the charities and raising money for your trip.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I always clarify that when somebody tries to give me 20 or 40 or whatever, I'd be like, now, is this to help me pay for my trip, or do you want this to go to one of these charities?
Yeah.
And a couple times they've said, oh, yeah, I wanted to donate to DAV. I'm like, well, you need to go on to DAV.org. And I showed them. And so, it's all good.
Yeah, that's cool. So for donating for your trip, which is what I'm going to tell my listeners to help you out with, you're gonna give me your GoFundMe thing, and I'm gonna put that in my my opening thing.
Yeah, and there's also, of course, PayPal and all that. So I don't know what people prefer to do.
I'm sure you have a Venmo.
And I got a Venmo.
Venmo's everybody. That's the easiest one for anybody.
Awesome. So as we're talking, I'm gonna pop that up and see it because it goes under your name, right? Maybe some other people that are of my era would need to like learn how to do this stuff too. So my Venmo is at William Rhino Mueller. That's really easy.
Venmo at William Rhino Mueller.
Yeah, and it's RHINO. And I don't really expect anybody in particular to actually donate, but if somebody feels led to, then awesome, and I greatly appreciate it. But I don't want to be coming across that I'm begging for money, but it all helps. I mean, I'm not eating fancy on the road. I'm eating beans and rice and packets of tuna.
Right.
And sometimes I'll splurge and actually stay in a really ratty 1-star hotel or whatever. I mean, if I had more time, I'd like to try to get a hotel sponsor. This will probably, get on TV a few more times, I would imagine, just because it's something unusual. And some media outlets actually like to cover feel-good stories.
Yeah.
So hopefully that's going to be what happens, because any publicity is good publicity. Matter of fact, tomorrow I'm getting ready to go on Fort Myers Beach and dress in an inflatable Pikachu outfit and unicycle down the beach. Just to be stupid crazy.
What's tomorrow?
Tuesday.
I'm off Tuesday.
Okay, you got to come down to Fort Myers Beach. Lonnie Kai.
Lonnie Kai at what time?
Noon to 5. And I won't be riding around as Pikachu for 5 hours, but maybe after I have a rum runner, have one rum runner and then dress up as Pikachu and get out there. I wish I had a saxophone I could borrow because I'd like to play the sax while I'm dressed as Pikachu.
I wish I had one you borrow too.
Yeah, so
that'd be cool. What time do you think you'll do that? Because I know you said 12 to 5. I won't get out for at 12, but
yeah, I would say probably around 3.
Perfect.
Yeah,
that's perfect for me.
Or anytime you say, "Hey, listen, Rhino, it's about time to put on the Pikachu outfit," I'll be like, you know what? You're right. Let's do this.
Cool. I got to get some video of it for my Instagram so that my people can check it out.
Yeah,
it's very cool, man. Well,
it'll be fun. It has no connection to anything. It's just a matter of being like something, silly and different. Like when I went into Circle K and I paid the clerk with my electric tape measure. Like I just got a check the other day, put in my bank account. It wasn't big. Somebody in Tokyo, some TV station in Tokyo paid to put it on TV in Tokyo. So it's cool. There's some cool Japanese people seeing the video. I don't know. I mean,
yeah,
made a little something off it, so it's all good.
That's cool.
Yeah.
You want to smoke any?
What's that?
You want to smoke any?
Sure. Yeah, I haven't done that in a while because I actually have a dry herb vaporizer. It's my preference. It's called the Ooze, and I typically
I got an Ooze.
Do you?
Yeah.
So I typically never buy it, and it's not because I'm cheap. It's just because I end up. What happens is I'm around people that are cool, and they'll invite me to join them, and then I'll offer, but then they never let me like help pay, or whatever. So it's like I don't know.
We got all this, bud, because my wife just got her medical card.
Oh, and by the way, not to interrupt real quick, but I want to say because I might forget. I never buy off the street. If I ever do buy it, it has to be medicinal. It has to be from a dispensary. So usually it's somebody that has it, that gets it, safely, because I don't want to end up with synthetic or something that's going to mess with my head.
The only thing I would worry about on the streets, which I never do, but is a synthetic cannabinoid that could possibly be sprayed on it. But even them, they're not that dangerous, but they're not as safe as the natural.
I thought there was some fake weed that was going around.
Well, now synthetic cannabis was very popular, but it's been outlawed though. So it was popular when it was sold at the head shops.
Oh.
But they outlawed it, so it's not there anymore.
Yeah.
And the problem is they would keep outlawing certain strains, and then the companies would create a new analog that was legal.
Right.
And the newer analogs were stronger, more potent, not as safe. And that's the problem with outlawing drugs. Is same things happen with fentanyl analogs.
If there's a demand, there's going to be a supply.
Exactly. There's a heroin demand. The problem is fentanyl is a lot stronger, and some of them are almost deadly or immediately deadly.
And what I heard is, because one of the things that I used to help administer to Ms. Love was her fentanyl patches. It would last for 3 days, transdermal. So she's getting a dose that she needs for severe pain. So it, that's what it's working on, is severe pain. But when you take it when you're not in pain and you cut it into pieces and chew it.
Oh yeah, there's that. Well, also, so she's on a regulated dose from a doctor.
Right.
And also the fentanyl at the hospital is a certain kind of fentanyl that's been regulated dose that they know what they're getting. It's not going to be lethal to her if she takes them out. She's supposed to.
Yeah, and it takes 3 days to slowly go in her system.
Yeah, but a lot of the fentanyl on the streets are analogs of fentanyl that the Chinese government will outlaw, but they don't have the same laws. In this country, we've outlawed all fentanyl analog. So you could come up with any analog of it you want, and it's still not legal to sell. And China is not the case. So they have to keep outlawing new analogs.
So when you say analog, that basically describes
It's a chemical. They change one thing in a chemical to make it
Gotcha.
slightly different, not illegal yet. And then they keep changing these chemicals, and some of them become more and more dangerous or stronger, and they keep flowing into the United States. So if you're a heroin user and you go buy heroin, and say there was a heroin bust, well, the heroin dealers can just take some fentanyl and cut some whatever they have to make a new dose of heroin to sell on the streets. But say they get that dose wrong, so you're used to this amount of heroin, and you shoot up and you get a strong dose of fentanyl. That's where a lot of these overdoses happen.
Makes sense, yeah.
Yeah. So and that's the problem.
Luckily, I've never experimented with any of that hard stuff. Like I said, for me, marijuana wasn't a gateway drug. That was the end of the road. Like,
and for most people,
you know,
it is.
I mean,
it really is.
Yeah,
But
it
only
hasn't led to anything.
For the people, it's not the end of the road. They had more going on with them that they wanted to search out other things. For most people, and actually, if you look at states with marijuana, medical marijuana, the pain pill and opiate addiction has gone down because they're
makes sense.
They're using this instead.
Yeah, and it doesn't have side effects.
Exactly, and people that can get over their withdrawals from opiate addiction can move to marijuana. I highly recommend that.
Yeah.
Because marijuana is not a drug you have to have or you have withdrawal.
This might be a good time to segue into talking about like kava and
We're
kratom.
going to talk about that. I'm going to light this up.
Yeah, because that helps you to avoid the alcohol, you know. Because think about it, when the United States tried to control alcohol consumption, what happened? You know, with prohibition, it was the organized crime got stronger than ever. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And even like NASCAR, I believe, stock cars started from being like runners of
booze. Yeah, they did.
So it's pretty cool when you think about it in a way, but it's also not cool.
Well, it's something that came out of the prohibition that wasn't necessarily negative. That depends on your thoughts on NASCAR, though. But I'm not a fan. But I've been to the NASCAR. I'm from North Carolina. It's fun to go. I've never liked it on TV. Then you go to a race, you're like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah, my brother Eddie, who lives in California with my other brother Robbie right now, used to go to like every race, fly everywhere, drive everywhere, and he would like follow it, you know. And he still worked too, but that was like his thing. And I still have never gotten to go to a race, but I prefer to be in the car driving it. Like, that's why, you know what I mean? I just nothing against watching sports, but like I'd rather play football than watch football, and I'd rather play tennis than watch it.
That's what my buddy Brandon calls it. Give Brandon Rayburn a shout. He calls it displaced masculinity. The guys that don't do anything for themselves, like they don't, they're not out. So they just get they need that masculine, that kind of fight. So they displace it into sports. They're like, if I can do this, then I can.
So it's like they're getting their sports fix vicariously through somebody else.
Exactly, because you need that. But if you're not out there being competitive yourself, then you're going to find it within. Sorry. We're smoking. This is called Durban Poison.
Durban Poison.
Durban Poison from Curaleaf. It's a sativa.
Excuse me, that's good. Can I do a little impersonation for you?
Oh, of course.
Just because you got the mics here. So there's a movie called The 40-Year-Old Virgin. Steve Carell, came out a long time ago. Obviously, it's about a 40-year-old virgin. So anyway, there's a part where Andy, who is the 40-year-old virgin, is at Smart Tech or whatever. It's like a Best Buy, and or Circuit City or whatever. So Moog, the Indian guy, walks in and he says to Andy, "Andy, man, how old are you? 25? "No, I'm 40. "Holy crap, man, you got to get on that. It's about love. It's about connection. It's not about your double-decker buses." And that's not what they say. It goes into a bunch of obscenities. But the point is, it really is about love, and it's about connection. So Moog, the Indian dude, hit the nail on the head. And the other thing I'll say is, most of the important things you need to learn, you can learn in kindergarten. So you need to just follow the golden rule and just chill, man.
Just chill and connection. Like that's what Johan Hari's book Lost Connections is about.
We're all equal, man. It doesn't matter. They're trying to pit us against each other. It's not about gender. It's not about race. We're all in the same human existence trying to, battle ourselves. And it's the old classic man versus nature, and man versus himself. The three great struggles. And if you want to read some killer books, if you're getting bored with what you've been reading, check out the great books that were put out by Encyclopedia Britannica. It's the greatest recorded history, in novel form and written form from the beginning of written history, starting with Homer through Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, all the way to Mark Twain. And I can't even say I've read them all, but really great books. They're called great books.
It's called Great Books.
So check it out. I'm not affiliated, but yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. One thing we were talking about that we brushed over was the kratom and kava thing, because you just found out about kratom and kava.
Yesterday.
So, yes.
Raggy, over here. Hey, Scoob! All right.
We
I haven't practiced that in a while, so I'm sorry.
But no, so kava is a good substitute for alcohol. Unfortunately, also could cause liver damage if you do it too much.
Ooh.
But I would imagine not as bad as alcohol. That's for you.
I'm putting it on right
too.
now. It says the Peace on Drugs podcast. Look that up, people. Actually, you're already listening to us. So,
and then kratom is a good substitute for harder opiates, morphine derivative opiates.
wow.
And because it is an opiate, but it's not derivative from morphine or from the poppy. It's a separate plant, but it activates your opioid receptors.
Which one's that?
Kratom.
Oh, cool.
So that's why I say kratom is a little more addictive than they'll tell you. Like it's just about like coffee, and it's similar addiction to coffee, but you will have withdrawals if you stop cold turkey. But it's a lot easier to get off of, and it's also non-lethal. You can't overdose if you take too much of it. So it's way safer than if you're addicted to the morphine derivatives. But a lot of these kids that I see at the kava bar just loving the kratom. I'm like, I hope you realize that this is an addictive drug. I mean, I'm totally for it. It's safe. If you like it, do it. But just understand that you may have withdrawals if you stop, but you can easily just taper off. Mm-hmm. But I just feel like people should know about it.
Do you feel like you're in the zone right now? I feel like I'm in the zone. Like I was mentioning to you earlier.
Because I'm high as fuck right now.
I was mentioning earlier before we came into the little sound studio and before Schnarf started going haywire because he's got some separation anxiety, but he's the best golden retriever ever. And Ms. Love had thought she made up the word Schnarf, and I'm like, honey, I think I've heard that word before, so I Googled it, and Schnarf is a character from the Thundercats, if you've ever seen those cartoons. And so, but we used to always say that to each other, like if something was good, you're like, oh, that's Schnarfy, or if it's not good, you're like, that's not very Schnarfy. Or hey, if you're feeling frisky, like, let's go Schnarf. I mean, it can mean all those things. And so when we got our dog, his name was Jackson. I'm like, he's not a Jackson. I'm sorry. I like the Jackson 5. Jacksons are cool.
Right.
Michael Jackson, whatever. Earlier I was wearing a white glove. It was my golf glove. It was comfortable. So I had it on. Then I took it off. Anyway, TMI, too much information. So right now I feel like I could bust out some poems and stuff, but I don't know if that segues correctly. Because I wrote one when I was in prison. It's supposed to be motivational. It's called Strive.
All right, let's do it.
All right, Strive. I'm 18 at the time, by the way. I'm trapped in a cell where I inevitably face 10 years in prison for a crazy car chase. I could have never imagined such an incredible waste, nor pictured myself taking a taste. Well, the people trapped here are full of emotion, but it's mainly the type that brings only revulsion. There's fear and there's anger, jealousy and hate, talk of lost love, broken families, all blamed on fate. It's sad that so many consider their plight as just one more reason to stray from the light. They rape and they steal, they kill and they fight. They don't seem to realize what they do isn't right. So for now, I sit here, I listen and wait until my name's called and I'm led to the gate. Hopefully for me, it's still not too late to strive and work hard and become something great. That's it.
It's great,
Thank
man.
you.
Love
Thank
it.
you. So
And what's crazy is that I woke up, I started writing a poem for my first time in a long time this morning. I had this crazy dream. And I guess you'll hear. I'm gonna read mine for the intro. That's gonna be one of the things. I was thinking I was gonna use it for the intro for a podcast. I was like, well, now I know what I'm gonna do it for the intro of this one.
Nice.
It's a very short poem about a drug overdose thing, but yeah, that's worked out really great. I can't believe you read a poem. First person to read a poem on the podcast when I woke up this morning writing a poem from the first time before
crazy.
I did the podcast.
And this is from memory, like it's you know. And I don't have a photographic memory. It's just I memorize it by reciting it a few times.
That's very cool. Well, let's wrap this thing up. So once again, at Rhino Ventures. That's which one's the at Rhino Ventures?
That's my Instagram.
That's Instagram. So go to Instagram, follow watch the whole thing. Oh, also, do you want to do a while you're out there on the road? If you any cool city you get to, shoot me a text if you ever want to just call in on the podcast, and we'll just release little segments of where you're at.
For sure, that'd be cool.
Yeah, very cool. And then at William Rhino Mueller, that's Mueller. William Rhino. Am I saying it right? Mueller.
William Rhino Mueller. Yeah,
Mueller.
that's my
like the Mueller.
my Venmo.
Yeah, so that's the Venmo if you want to help support this cause. And we're going to get off here. We're going to work on a quick little video clip for the YouTube channel. So make sure you check that out at the Peace on Drugs podcast on YouTube. And William, it was thank you. Or should I call you Rhino or William?
I prefer Rhino.
Yeah. All right, listen, Rhino. Thank you so much for being on here. It was a pleasure.
Man. Enjoy it.
It was great meeting you.
You too, brother.
All right.
All right,
Peace
awesome.
out.
Peace.